Are live. Welcome to Retro Reload. I am your host, Fire Pilot, the Red Beater Gamer, or today, the Cheesehead. Now you're wondering, why is he all packered up right now? Well, you'll find out soon enough. First, let's go with our guest and our co-host, the one, the only, Dash B.
Hi, folks. I'm your host, Dash B, and we are live. Next.
It is me,
Rumors are
Lizzie Hedgehog.
rumors are true. They are officially married. Lizzie and
Who?
you and Sonic.
I know, right?
The great one, Turf, from Our Parents' Basement.
Yeah, y'all need to check us out. The Our Parents Basement podcast is every Thursday night. Yeah, I'm Turf, hanging out with these guys tonight. Appreciate y'all having me.
And our special guest, Brad Bell. Brad, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey guys, thanks for having me on today. I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, and have a little website called Tecmo Bowl versus RBI Baseball. And it's geared towards showcasing the entertainment value of those classic Nintendo sports games.
Yep, folks, we have a link to that page down the doodly-doo after the show, so you can definitely check it out. Brad, so you run tournaments as well as play in tournaments, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Excellent. Tell us, how many tournaments have you hosted this year so far, and how many have you participated in?
I've hosted two. The first one was in Omaha, Nebraska, at a place called Beercade, and the second one was in Des Moines, Iowa, at the Keg Stand. And then I played in those, and I was also in Houston, Texas, for the Retro World Series as well, which had a Tecmo Bowl and RBI baseball tournament.
Awesome. Awesome. I think Jeremy is dying. He's got some questions over there. He's just burning up to ask you. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Okay, our first question is, tell us about the first time you ever played Tecmo Bowl and how old were you?
It was probably shortly after it came out, so that would have put me, I believe, at 12. It was a Friday night, Central Iowa. We had a light dusting of snow. We went to this video store. I still remember it pretty vividly. Got Tecmo Bowl, went out to my dad's farmhouse, and proceeded to pretty much play the rest of the evening. I probably played till about 3 in the morning.
Wow. Now to be clear, we're talking Tecmo Bowl, not Tecmo Super Bowl, right?
Yes. This goes back to '89. Yep.
Gotcha. So any feelings for the other games, or what's your, is Tecmo Bowl like? That's it. That is your go-to.
That is definitely my go-to. I do enter in Tecmo Super Bowl tournaments in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm okay at that game. Also like RBI baseball, which is obviously, it's included on the website. But Tecmo Bowl is just, it's the thing for me. It's my passion. It's my drive to just always try to raise my game and to reach the top level of the Tecmo Bowl playing circuit.
All right, I got a question for you. What makes Tecmo Bowl superior to Tecmo Super Bowl? Because it's obviously not super. So how can it be better?
Well, that's a good question. Tecmo Bowl has a lot of strategic aspects that people don't realize, don't understand, don't even know about, which Tecmo Super Bowl also has. But in a way, they're actually equals, just because Tecmo Super has more plays, more teams, a few more features. I mean, more doesn't always equate to better. And don't get me wrong, I think Tecmo Super Bowl is an amazing game. I love to play that, occasionally, but the original Tecmo Bowl, the best thing that really lures me in is I grew up watching the NFL in the 80s, and so those teams are immortalized. They're just perfectly preserved in Tecmo Bowl, the original. So, it's kind of what I always go back to.
So for you, it's more of like a, Tecmo Bowl is like a time capsule.
Yes, exactly. Perfect analogy.
Excellent. Which teams do you think were captured the best in Tecmo Super Bowl? By the best, I guess I mean like most true to their real life counterparts in that time.
Tecmo or Tecmo Super Bowl?
Tecmo Bowl.
Obviously, I think the Bears were. Chicago definitely was.
Defense is a pain in the rear end, let me tell you.
It's good defense, yeah. So definitely the Bears, I think, are probably one of the most accurate teams on the game. I also believe Indy is a really accurate team. They were a really blue-collar type of team, but with Eric Dickerson as a running back, that's really what separated them from a lot of other teams.
Who did they have? They had somebody as a punt returner, didn't they? The Colts did. They had an awesome punt returner, or maybe it was a kickoff returner.
Nobody special. Actually, you're probably thinking of Gentry with the Bears.
Okay.
Dennis Gentry was the guy that could take about every third or fourth kickoff to the house.
Jeez.
Now, were there any teams in Tecmo Bowl that were way better in the game than they ever were in real life?
That's I think the programmers really nailed the teams with a pretty fair sense of accuracy, especially in the way that we rank them. Like the best teams that we found over and over, in the aggregate is the Giants, 49ers, and Bears, which were obviously teams that were winning Super Bowls during the era that Tecmo Bowl is based on. So I think they really just nailed the teams with the hierarchy from good to bad.
Excellent. It's a hard thing to do because when you think about football and how broad it goes, I mean, how many teams there are, how many individual contributors within the teams, and then just the dynamicness of the different plays that the different teams will have and everything. That's a lot of complexity to capture in a game. What was your favorite aspect of football that got captured in Tecmo Bowl? I'll say besides all of it, right? Like, was there a particular thing that they captured in such a way that you're like, wow, that's amazing! I can't believe they captured this in a game.
Probably the best aspect of Tecmo Bowl is that it still has a strong arcade feel. So it lacked, like the realism that Madden has these days. But what was cool is they made the superstar players stand out like so much more than the average players. So it's almost like Lawrence Taylor and Bo Jackson are kind of like a god on the field, and so you definitely had that feel and sense when you play with those guys. So I think that was like the main lure for me and a lot of other people, was just how much fun it was to play with the superstars.
Yeah, Bo Jackson is like the most unbalanced player in the history of games. He was ridiculous how fast he was. Now, of course, Barry Sanders was fast too, but those two. It was ridiculous. That's stuff of legends. Like, we tell our grandchildren about how good Bo Jackson was at Tecmo Bowl.
I think part of the mystique that surrounds Bo Jackson, and he was, I watched him play both sports, so he was a phenomenal athlete, and, he was as good as the stories are, but I really feel like the mystique of Bo Jackson is fueled a lot by his Tecmo Bowl playing character.
You really may be onto something, because people that are between probably 38, 35, around they were 10 years old, 12 years old, 15 years old whenever Tecmo Bowl came out, and yeah, Bo Jackson was the man then, and that kind of ingrained for the rest of our lives how awesome he was. But we knew more about Tecmo Bowl than we did actually ESPN, so that may have been where we got our sports stats.
Yeah, definitely. And when Tecmo Super Bowl introduced the stats into the game, I feel like it made Bo Jackson even more of a phenomenon because, in that game they charted, stats per game, per season. So you had guys trying to run for like 5,000 yards in a season with Bo Jackson. So,
and it was doable.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
That's awesome. I see Jeremy with like an ear-to-ear grin. I'm sure he's got more stuff he's just bursting to say. Throw it out there, Jeremy.
Well, real quick, if you want to ask Brad a question, hashtag RRP FTW, or general comments, concerns. Okay, question 2. What made you interested in starting to compete and starting up your website?
When I was a kid, this kid and his mom moved in across the street, and this kid was so good at Tecmo Bowl. He ruined Tecmo Bowl for like the whole neighborhood. He was just smoking kids, and so people just quit playing. And what's shocking to like look back is how great that game was. So I kept playing this guy, and eventually I was kind of able to pull even with even teams. So it really started the drive there because this guy was whooping us pretty bad. So that started way back when. And then for the second question, as for the competitions, like you mean like the tournaments I put on,
Yes.
or when we found out about the Retro World Series in Houston, we wanted to go down and kind of make a vacation of it and attend. And so we kind of, I felt like I'm a really good player, but I kind of wanted to see where I stood with random people off the street and stuff like that. So we started doing these tournaments just to kind of find out, where we stacked up with other people.
So what you are saying is that your tournament game now, because part of you always wants to beat the pants of the parents, the child of the kid down the street. And I don't know why I went from like Freud to like Mario in that, but just go with it.
Yeah, that's neighborhood kids,
Do you remember the kid's name still?
Yeah, his name is Brian Hansen. So
You should look him up.
Want to play again?
so unfortunately he's passed away. So
Oh.
sad, kind of a tragic deal, but his memory lives on, and really cool guy. So
Interesting. So Jeremy, I know you got other questions. You're just burning to ask. So just fire away, my friend. Just fire away.
I was looking at your website and see there's a lot, because you have strategies on the websites. Because you told me before when we talked about the show, you just don't click and play. Click and play, and you just can write and play. What's the strategy behind it? You want to go over some of that?
Yeah. Well, to the just the guy off the street, they're trying to pick the same play as you are, and to me, that's a failure. That's a recipe for failure. So there's certain ways to slow down the run game. So we will choose a certain defender and pick a certain run play, which in effect we can stop that run play, but it also is advantageous for us to limit the other run play to just a few yards. There's another base defense we use where even if you pick the wrong pass play, you'll get coverage help on the other pass play. And so some pass plays are more advantageous to pick, even when the offense isn't calling them. So in a way, what we're trying to do is make you slowly move down the field, because eventually we're going to stop you or you're going to make a mistake. And so we might call the same play over and over and over, and you're still gaining 3-4 yards a pop, but eventually we'll stop you and or we'll get a turnover. So
the deep balls for amateurs, right?
Yeah. Well, in Tecmo Bowl, if you go back and just cover the deep guy, you're going to intercept it like 90% of the time, 95% of the time. So, but also in Tecmo Super Bowl, they'll throw the jump ball, and it's a little frowned upon, but it's part of the game in Tecmo Super Bowl. So,
is there any plays that are just like universally bad? Like this play never works out. Don't even bother with it.
Flea flicker.
The Washington and Minnesota, they have that wide receiver run play, and it's a slow developing play, and it's not a play that really hardly works. So that's probably the plays that I would answer for that question.
Okay. Are there any?
Y'all really studied this, man.
Yeah.
This is four plays per team, and you're like, well, these two teams they have so and so plays that are pretty pitiful. Of course, it's not much of a playbook, but you know every team's playbook, don't you?
Yeah. My friends and I, we've played with our spreadsheets, like we've probably pushed about 800 games. So, I've played with every team like probably at least 40 times. I've played against every team, probably 40 times. So, and then after you play for 6 hours, you and your friends sit around for another 2 hours talking about the matchups, what we learned tonight, what we see, what didn't work. So over the course of like 10 or 12 years, you can put together pretty much a novel of, defensive thoughts and ideas.
And when you say spreadsheets, you literally have spreadsheets, don't you?
Yes, yeah, on my computer. We kind of keep track of scores, who had what team, who was player 1, who was player 2, and then also the key notes of the game, because the notes kind of help tell the story. If you just look at the score, that doesn't tell you anything, but the notes will tell you about the turning point in the game or stuff like that.
We have a tweet from the real Donald Trump. By the way, this might be a made-up tweet. But we have a tweet from the real Donald Trump who asks Microsoft or Google Docs for the spreadsheets.
I'm a Microsoft guy, so.
Okay. He says excellent, excellent. We're gonna make Tecmo Bowl great again.
Okay.
So
That
not only
may
do
or
you
may not have been a made-up tweet.
not only do you use spreadsheets, you also record your matches, correct?
We do. We put them on DVD. So it's just sometimes, we have memorable games and we like to chronicle them some on the site. And so sometimes I want to go back and look at a certain sequence, and you're not going to remember. Like when you play 12 games of Tecmo Bowl in a night, you're not going to remember much about the sixth game or whatever. So so it's easy to look back or stuff like that. So.
Now, since you've recorded the games and you've gone back and you've rewatched them and that kind of thing, and you've played so many games, I always, like, the developer in me wonders, is there any inherent advantages to being one player versus the other player?
Yes, we found that player one is more advantageous.
Really?
It is, yes. Well, at least
I knew it. I knew it.
That I play with. Yeah, in the group that I play with, for the most part, we kept stats on a 212 game set, and player one won about 60 to 61% of the time. So your running back a little more elusive as player one. I also charted running back stats for like 41 games, and the running backs as player one tended to gain about 1.5 more yards per carry, which obviously adds up. So there was a couple other inherent advantages, but yeah, player one is the side that you want to be.
Now, is this purely like anecdotal, like just the way that you guys have played the games, or have you done like frame by frame comparisons of like the running speed of player one versus player two, that kind of thing?
I kind of have. I had a ROM where the teams were identical, and so what I did was I got in coach mode in 2-player, and so it was Chicago versus Chicago, same player, same everything. And so while I didn't do like a frame-by-frame comparison, there were certain plays where like a defensive end would get to the running back at a certain amount of time for player one, which they wouldn't for player two. So that was kind of the cincher in my research. We had all these stats and facts and figures that we'd acquired as 2-player games, but once I saw that, even with computer versus computer, it really cinched it for me.
Yeah, that's basically very telling. Yeah, if you go machine to machine, and it ends up boiling down to that, then that is interesting though. That it's not like a controller input type thing. It's deeper in the coding than that. That's pretty interesting. I wouldn't have expected that there'd be a specific player advantage. I just kind of threw that one out there.
We actually have a tweet right now from Nate that he says, player one jukes better.
They do. I agree. I believe so. So,
Brad, I got a question for you, man. With all these facts and figures, which one of y'all is the inherent geek? You said you guys, guess more than one of your buddies doing this. Somebody is an engineer. Somebody is a software designer. Which one of y'all decided to start putting this in spreadsheets and actually, just completely nerd out on these statistics?
My buddy Cam Allen lives up in Hamilton, Ontario. He's a guy I met because of Tecmo Bowl. And so he works in data and stuff, and so he was kind of the originator of putting games on spreadsheets. So it all started with the
Yeah. We have a lot more viewers tonight than normal, so I think maybe he's our one Canadian viewer, and he's brought a few of his Canadian friends to watch. So, hello Canada, glad to have you aboard.
Surprisingly so, those 2 Canadians up there are shrewd Tecmo Bowl players. So, you got to watch out for those guys.
I figured they would have a CFL version of it that Doug Flutie played in.
Doug Flutie. I've heard that.
Did you ever eat Flutie Flakes? Were those ever in your home?
I don't believe so. No, can't say I did.
So your friends, you want to talk about your friends and how you guys up all your guys' level by keep competing, because you said you're all at the same level.
Yeah, actually, Team Canada was they were actually ahead of us a bit. We started meeting those guys in Chicago. It was kind of the middle point for us Midwest guys and them, and we kind of knew the same stuff they did, but they had more experience. So those first few years we went over there, they definitely handled us pretty well, but it was close games. But I think as Nate and I have continued to play here against each other, we've kind of picked up the pace and caught up with the Canadians.
So since we gave the shout out to Canada, we've collected 4 more viewers. So I want to welcome our Canadian overlords who are now taking over the entire audience of the show. So, I don't actually know if they're. Oh, one of them just left. It must be that they weren't from Canada. Sorry about that.
Oh.
Well, I'll tell you what. Do you know there are several like celebrities out there that are huge Tecmo Bowl fans. I don't know if you know this or not, but Jaleel White, the guy that was Urkel back in the day,
Yay!
huge Tecmo Bowl fan.
Lizzie knows Urkel.
Yes,
So
I do.
you can send him Tecmo Bowl tweets and he will tweet you back. Just so you know.
Note to self. Yeah.
Lizzie, there's how you go. Like, did you know this one, Turf? Lizzie, tell them what else Jaleel White did.
He voiced the original Sonic the Hedgehog.
I've heard that before.
He was awesome. I wish he'd come back.
So now, Lizzie, if you want Jaleel White to respond to your tweets, apparently, like, whisper some sweet Tecmo Bowl nothings into his Twitter account.
Okay.
Give that a shot. Let us know how that works.
Okay.
So, Jeremy, do you want to ask him the question that's probably going to embarrass you?
What question? Oh yeah,
Question number 6, my friend.
Okay, I've only played Tecmo Bowl a handful of times. How badly would you destroy me if we went 1-on-1, and you really want to destroy me? Like you want to run that score up on me? How badly would you do it?
It actually would depend on what you did offensively. So, if you're coming out throwing the ball around and I'm intercepting you like 5, 6, 7 times. Probably wouldn't be anything to put 70 or 80 points on you, but especially if I had like the 49ers. But if you came out, ran the ball, wanted to run 3 times and punt, play it safe.
And I was passing the whole time.
Yeah, if you're passing and you're not familiar with the playbook, it could get really ugly by halftime. So it might be 35-zip at halftime. So.
But the sad part is there's no Packers.
Yeah, They should have. If they would have stepped up their game in the '80s, they would have been on the game. So
we kind of stuck there for about 30 years. And Nathan said, "Brad's a nerd. Canadians are geeks."
All right, guys. I'm gonna repeat the shout out that Jeremy gave a little bit earlier. If you want to tweet us live during the show, like some other folks are, we'd love to hear it. Hashtag RRPFTW. We check that during the show, and if we see it, we'll give it a shout out. You can make a shout out. You can ask questions, anything. Hashtag RRPFTW.
We also have another one that says, "Ask Brad what it was like playing quarterback for the Packers for 16 years."
Mm.
Couldn't tell you.
They're saying you look like Brett Favre.
Oh yeah. Okay. It's funny. Sorry, I didn't pick that. I had a picture of me and a guy at the Retro World Series, and I had a really good beard, and I got the gray in it, and I actually posted Brett Favre sighting. So totally went over my head.
So now that we've talked about how badly you would crush Jeremy, let's flip the pendulum in the other direction. What's the greatest match you ever played in? Like was there ever somebody that really made you earn every, just you weren't expecting to have the competition and they brought it and you had to earn every inch?
So many great games. One game sticks out is most of the people we play, we can handle pretty well, and maybe they'll stay within a couple touchdowns. But in Des Moines, in Iowa, at the tournament, this guy, he split with my friend, knocked him out of the tournament, and I met him in the championship game, and he was up on me at halftime. So 6-0. So I had to come back, pretty much play a flawless half, and win 10-6. But that was a really gutty game because I was like, wow, some guy off the street's gonna beat me. But so definitely the best guy that we've faced outside of our circle in the 3 tournaments I've been at this year.
Did you get a chance to talk with him after the game to figure out where that game came from, what fueled him to that level of competitive edge?
We're friends on Facebook now. We really haven't talked much about Tecmo Bowl though. It's kind of off in other tangents, but he runs a really efficient offense, and so we've looked at maybe emulating a little bit of that into our style, but just a good player, and he sees the game. He has an interesting way of how he sees the game and how he plays it and attacks the defense. So definitely learned a little bit from that guy.
Yeah, you want to be careful when the guy comes in dressed like Neo and sits down with the controller in the hand and goes, "There is no game. It's just code."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little scary. Might not want to double down on that one.
So
Okay,
I feel now that we've seen his game, and Nate, my buddy Nate and I, we've had a lot of time to talk it over and kind of dissect things. So I think now if we played him, we definitely have a little bit more edge. But in a tournament within a short span of a couple hours, it's like when you play a team in the NFL in the short week on a Thursday night. Teams can sneak up on you. So I think now that we've seen it, it'd be more like a 2-week layoff between the conference championship game and the Super Bowl. So I think we'd be ready for him now.
Awesome. So you guys heard it here first. He's ready for a rematch anytime, anywhere.
Okay, if someone who's listening right now wants to attend your events or compete, how would they go about that?
As far as joining a tournament or put their
Go
own
to your
tournament?
events, well, first, join your tournaments.
Okay. Our tournaments are based in Omaha, Nebraska, and Des Moines, Iowa. We're looking to try Kansas City as another place, and a buddy, Troy Frisk up in Green Bay, wants us to bring the whole setup and do a tournament there. So about a month or so before the tournament, we'll put some information on Tecmo Bowl versus RBI.com. Is the main place we'll put it. This will be on the front page with a link to any Facebook post about it and things like that. So basically, if they contact me through Tecmo Bowl versus RBI, we can definitely keep them in the loop or send them an email or something.
There is an entry fee, correct? So they know.
Yes, all our tournaments are $15 entry fee. All the money collected will go for prizes to the top 4 finishers. We usually have we give away prizes in between the group play and the tournament stage. About $50 worth of stuff. I've also done kick returns for cash. So if you had a kick return touchdown in group play, you got a $5 bill.
Oh, wow. Cool.
So mostly in the Des Moines tournament, which was cool, was most everybody that was there either won money because of where they placed, or they won a prize, or they won some kick return cash. So pretty much everybody out of the field of 16 came away with something.
Cool. So you don't have to go in and totally dominate in order to get prizes. You can just go in, have a good time, and get some loot.
Yeah, sure. Yep, it's possible. Yep.
Awesome. So Ryan on our Twitter, this is a real tweet.
Yes,
Ryan hit us up on the Twitter. He just said, "I'm watching the Retro Reload podcast. Thank you very much for watching. Also, thank you for sharing the link." He says, "Not huge into football, but that hedgehog gal is a cutie."
That's confirmed. It's confirmed.
Thank you.
That's a real tweet, I promise. All right.
No, guys, Broncos are not better than Green Bay. I see the YouTube comments down there. Sorry, talking to their fans.
Alrighty. So we talked about greatest matches. We talked about how people can join your tournaments. Tell us a little bit about what your tournaments are. Like, how much infrastructure is there at a tournament? How many Nintendos do you generally have going? How many players total do you see in a particular tournament? That kind of thing.
Okay. Well, the first thing I want to stress is when people come to my tournaments, they're giving me, basically exchanging their money for what I want to give in return is a positive experience. So, I mean, that's my first goal, is to, so presentation I want to be good, and just a fun event and a good place to do it at. So, at the moment I have 10 Nintendos, and I use about 8 TVs. So our setup is 8 TV stations in there. It's kind of how we started off with. I like to get set up the night before, so when everybody shows, we're just ready to rock and roll from there. So that's kind of the main thing. And we have a group stage where you will play 3 or 4 games within your group. So even if you're not a very good player, you're still going to get quite a few games in before you're actually eliminated. So it's kind of the setup there.
Oh, that's cool. So it's because I go to anime convention, so it's kind of like the game rooms, because like we'll have like tables set up with like giant looking power outages with TVs set up. Okay, cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. So now, have you played? Because I know that you've played some Tecmo Super Bowl, right? So
Yes.
have you played any that? Correct me if I'm wrong, but some of those Tecmo Super Bowl games, the later ones, were actually 4-player, right?
Actually, I did. After about Tecmo Super Bowl, I think the first one on Super Nintendo, I didn't play any of the later ones. So I can't answer that question for you.
Ah, okay. Because one of the things that I can ask you a variation of the question then. I was going to ask you how the dynamic changes in a tournament setting when you go from 2-player to 4-player. But since we don't have that question, I'll ask you this one. How does the dynamic change between playing CPU versus human beings? Is there any benefit once you've been tournament gaming as long as you have? Is there any benefit to trying to play the CPU, or is it just not worth it?
For me in Tecmo Bowl, the main thing I'll play the computer for is to keep sharp with every playbook. And here's the thing. From the second week of Tecmo Bowl on, the defensive end, the top defensive end, will drop back into coverage, so it kind of simulates human pass defense coverage. So you kind of start to see those windows that you have to try to fire the ball into, or you kind of just get your cycle, back up to speed or up to snuff. There is advantages to playing the computer. They're not great for me, but it's almost like a little bit of a practice.
Is it? I know in some games, like when I was playing Risk Factions on the PS3, after a while of me playing through the game, I came to learn that different characters in the game, different AI characters, actually had certain patterns or certain things that they were prone to, that made it. After you'd played a couple of matches with them, you could really game them and kind of work the system, but it was unique for each character. How is the computer AI in Tecmo Bowl? Does every team pretty much have? I know they all have different plays, but does this computer fall into common patterns across all the teams, or is each team really behave differently?
From what I understand from some programmer friends, it's pretty much it's a random generator and like how they pick plays, and also it's pretty random, like when the defensive end is dropping into coverage, whether he goes deep with your deep receiver or whether he stays on the screen. So really no rhyme or reason there.
Okay, so you haven't seen any, like the Bears as CPU have a particular pattern, and then the Colts as CPU have a particular pattern. You haven't seen anything like that?
No, nothing I've ever noticed, no.
Okay, that's interesting, and you played enough games to know, so.
Yeah, a tweet from Troy said there is no co-op support in Tecmo Bowl games. Thank you for that, Troy.
All right, and none of the Tecmo Bowl games. That's really interesting. Yes. I could have swore Tecmo Super Bowl 3 had worked with the Turbo Tap, but maybe not. Or not the Turbo Tap, but you know what I mean, the Super Nintendo variant of that.
Well, I wonder, like, those games, like, were the Houston, like, well, back in the day, were the Houston Oilers, did you play that game too? I mean, those players too? Because, I mean, they don't exist anymore. Now we got the Houston Texans, but back in the day we had Houston Oilers. Was that in
Warren
the game?
Moon.
That was the sequel, actually, yeah. I've played that game. Actually had the Oilers as one of my teams in a Tecmo Super tournament in Lincoln. I think I won 7-5, the ugliest game ever played in the history of Tecmo Super Bowl. But yeah, Oilers are really good in Tecmo Super Bowl.
Nice. What made that the ugliest game ever played? Was it really brutal, really cutthroat?
I don't remember. I think the guy I was playing had a really good defense but a bad offense, and I wasn't able to take advantage of some things. And so late in the game, I had the lead, and I was terrified I was going to fumble and lose the game. So I ended up running with like Warren Moon a lot. You know, like Warren Moon was one of the most prolific passers in the history of the NFL, and here I am, like basically running him by the sideline so I can't fumble.
I bet you it wasn't. I bet you it wasn't expected. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure. But I was scared and I was trying to hold on, so it worked.
Nice. You know what else I hear can get pretty cutthroat in the tournament scene? Barney's Hide and Seek, the game. For the Sega
Yay!
Genesis. I heard this can get really dark. You know, like you can get shanked like playing this game in tournament. No, I'm just kidding. I just made that up.
Brad, you have an interesting trophy. Would you like to show it? It's really cool.
Oh, sure. This is what I won this year at the Retro World Series in Houston.
Ooh.
So
That's
that up there. It's not glass. I'm not sure what it's made out of, but it's clear. Has a Retro World Series logo, and the base, which you might be able to see. Oh, let me flip this up.
Part.
The base is it's like a laser etched Nintendo controller.
Oh wow, that's gorgeous.
That's what it sets on, and then it's just obviously the directional pad here is
That
for
is
the end of it. So that's what Hal Hawkins gave out at the Retro World Series for every tournament champion. So there was like Street Fighter 2, Mortal Kombat 2, Super Mario Kart, NHL 94, RBI Baseball, Tecmo Bowl, a couple other games as well.
That's
I'm sorry I missed that, and that was like in my hometown. I remember seeing it on my Facebook. I didn't go.
She want us next to go support Brad.
Yeah, I can go bug you, Brad.
So yeah, it was a 4-day event. As far as I know, Hal's going to hold it again next year.
Awesome.
He had it at the Ava Center, which is a really phenomenal event center. So it was top notch from top to bottom, especially in the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. So what kind of like when you're at home, just playing it for the love of playing it, if you still play it that way, what's your home setup? What do you got the Nintendo plugged into nowadays?
Usually I gotta go dig one out of my stack and hook it up. So I don't play the computer very often, like hardly ever. So we're mostly just Tecmo Bowl shines in 2-player version, 2-player mode. So there's tournaments where if I can't get together with my friend, like it might be I won't play like even a month before the tournament. Just we just show up and we're good to go.
At this point, it's probably mostly muscle memory, right?
Yeah. Also, we know so many strategies. We've played in all these matchups so many. Like we know just what works and what doesn't. So I'm not a great Tecmo Bowl player because I have a special ability with my hands. It's because it's all between the ears is what makes me one of the best Tecmo Bowl players out there.
Gotcha. Have you ever? I have to know. Have you ever read the instruction manual?
I did. I have a couple sitting around, but when I first rented the game from the video store, the first time I played it, you got the photocopied version of it. I don't know if you guys remember getting those. And
yeah.
So yeah, I read it all and all that stuff. So I like to go back and read it because it talks about Cleveland has a good passing attack with Kozar, type thing. So it's cool.
Nathan says, "I see that dang trophy in my nightmares. That trophy's better in person."
It's nice.
So you give him nightmares with that trophy.
I would be afraid of like an earthquake or something. You said it's not made of glass though, right?
No, it's a thick, clear. It's kind of like a plastic, but it's at least a ½ inch thick. It's not very heavy, but and it's almost a foot tall. So
It's very shiny.
I have to ask Hal what it's made out of, but it's
goodness.
clear as glass.
So talk to us a bit about RBI baseball. Like, how did you fall in love with that one first, or did you fall in love with that one second? Like, how does RBI baseball fit into this Tecmo Bowl fetish?
RBI was a game I actually didn't play a ton as a kid. I remember, it was fun and all, but maybe around like 2004, for some reason, that was kind of when my friends and I in the town I was from started to actually get back into playing Tecmo and RBI a lot. So that's kind of where I picked up on the RBI again, and the pitcher-batter interface for RBI I think is the best of any NES baseball game out there. Like when you're pitching, you can see the pitch come in frame by frame by frame, perfect curves, everything like that. So that's really what I love about RBI.
And when you say RBI, you're talking about the ones with the short, fat guys. You're not talking 2, 3, 4.
Yes, the original short, fat white batters.
That's the best one. I'm just glad somebody else agrees.
Yeah. My favorite baseball game, I do actually really enjoy a particular baseball game on the NES. I believe it's based on the Turf. You can help me out on this one because this one was in your complete NES review. I believe this one's based on the RBI baseball engine, isn't it?
I don't know if it is or not, but it is a very good game.
It is.
So, Bad News Baseball. So I really liked it. I liked it because it's got a lot of character. It's got a rabbit umpire. You can hit home runs, and it has like animated sequences of like the ball leaving the earth and like smiling as it like blazes past the sun. So it's a lot of fun to play with a boy.
But all right, back to RBI. I mean, we kind of covered Tecmo Bowl pretty in depth. RBI baseball is without a doubt an excellent baseball game. How did this game get made that the Mets represented New York and not the Yankees?
The RBI is based off the league champions from '86 and '87. So that's why, and the Mets obviously, played in the series in '86. So the 8 teams on there are based off the NLCS, ALCS from those years.
Wow, that was actually a real answer. Way to go! I was not expecting that.
How many teams were on that game?
8.
Oh, yeah, 8 teams and then two All-Star teams. So only 10.
Were the Houston Astros in it?
They are.
Ooh, okay.
Unfortunately, they're like the worst team on the game.
Now was that in the effort to be true to real life at the time, or is that just poor programming?
Probably a little of both. They're pretty, like they got Nolan Ryan and Mike Scott. So as far as pitching goes, like they're pretty good. But their bats were really weak. But they had a lot of speed at the time. So, and the problem with RBI is like power is the prominent thing, and speed is like okay. And like speed is important in baseball, especially in the '80s. Speed was like a big thing. But it didn't translate to RBI baseball, so that's kind of why the Astros and the Cardinals are, easily the 2 worst teams, even though they're the fastest teams.
Yeah, the Cardinals are ridiculous. Like Vince Coleman, man, if you put one down, if it hits the ground, he's on first. I mean, that dude's unreal. And Ozzie Smith, he's amazing. I mean, if you can make the bat hit the ball and keep it on the ground, he'll be on base.
Do you ever plan to do tournaments with RBI baseball?
Yes, I've actually held one in Omaha a few years back. So going forward, we're going to do a doubleheader. So we'll do like Tecmo Bowl at noon, and then we'll do RBI baseball at like 6 p.m. or something. So with all the equipment I have and the Nintendos and TVs, it makes sense to just knock them both out in one day.
That's true.
Just make it into a big event. And I think also since people like the games, like they're such popular, I think having both events would maybe help kind of draw people in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Is there any other games that you think you might add to the tournament circuit down the road, or you think it's pretty much going to be those 2 games?
Yeah, just those 2. And the other thing is, you really could only do about 2 tournaments in one day, like based on how our setup is with group play and then the bracket. So it's not really not feasible to have a 3rd game anyways. But there's not a 3rd game that I really enjoy as much as those 2.
No ice hockey love? Come on.
Ooh, I do love ice hockey. The original with where you could pick the fat guy and the skinny guy. I love that game. That game is fun.
How about Mutant League Hockey?
Oh, I actually have not played that.
So this game is ridiculously difficult to get your hands on, but it's supposedly a really, really solid. It's based on the NHL engine from EA.
Oh.
So, and then I guess since I brought that one out, have you played this?
I might have played it as a kid, but I've seen tons of videos on YouTube, and so I need to, because like they blow up sections of the field and all kinds of craziness. So yeah, definitely a game that you have to at least play.
Oh yeah, Mutant League Football. I think my son's favorite plays on that are the bribe the ref and kill the ref plays. He'll bribe the ref repeatedly, and then when the ref won't take his bribes anymore, he kills the ref to get a new ref that he can bribe some more.
Oh wow!
It sounds like organized crime football or something.
It is.
It pretty much is.
With
So,
Bones Jackson.
Outside of football and RBI baseball, any other games you enjoy?
I can't say that's pretty much it. I can't say I'm really a big retro gamer or anything, and it's I'm married, I got a kid, I got my job, it's on call, and so I moved to Omaha from Central Iowa, so just when I got a chance to get together with my friends, we're playing Tecmo Bowl.
Mm.
So how did you amass all the Nintendo Entertainment Systems that you have? Did you eBay those? Did you yard sale those?
I was lucky. Probably about 12 years ago, before the retro craze happened, I had somebody give me like maybe 3 or 4 of them for free, which didn't work, so I cleaned them and got them working. There was this garage sale in a commercial building. I think I got 4 of them for like $10 each. So
Oh, nice.
right before the prices went, skyrocketed to $50 or whatever, I was able to get a bunch of them.
Nice. Now, have you ever used any? You mentioned before emulators, but how have you used emulators and/or devices like Game Genie? Obviously, not during a tournament, but have you used these specifically with the intent of analyzing the game and analyzing how certain plays operate and how different dynamics of the game are in certain situations?
We do a little emulation, but not in that manner is the thing. Here's the thing. Tecmo Bowl was released in February of '89 in the U.S. A year and a half later, it was released only in Japan. So everything was the same, but they gave player updates, or like a roster update. The teams are the same team and all, but they have different skills and abilities because they have different players in different positions. So I have some programmer friends that have merged the 2 versions together, and this has really kind of fueled our fires for playing Tecmo Bowl, because then it was almost like a 15 or whatever year overdue roster update when we finally got it. So we use emulation for that, so we can play with Japan Seahawks or Japan 49ers versus the USA counterparts.
Ooh.
Well, have you, speaking of, have you kept up with any of the current roster updates? I know they have Tecmo Bowl 2016 now. I mean, the ROM for that's floating around out there. Have you kept up with any of those games?
Yeah, I usually will download that when the TecmoBowl.org forums, when they release the new version of Tecmo Super Bowl. I will play those. Those are definitely a lot of fun. So.
Do you have are you limited strictly to emulation on those, or do you have they have carts that'll take SD cards. You could run that on a Super EverDrive on your actual, or I'm sorry, an EverDrive N8, and run that on your real hardware if you wanted to.
Yeah, I could do that, but they actually will have. There's a guy in Canada, I think it's called NESReproductions.com, and he will put a ROM onto a cartridge. So if you want to just buy the cartridge from I'm not sure who it is on TecmoBowl.org, but for like $40 or whatever, you can get it on a cartridge if you like the old classic feel.
Nice.
Otherwise, I think they just give the ROM away. I mean, if you just want to download it for free, and as you said, put it on the I use a GameCube to actually emulate. So I'm familiar with what you're talking about. That cart, you put the SD card in though.
Yeah. Alternatively, too, you could probably play it on the Retron 5 and apply the patch on the Retron 5 using your original Tecmo Bowl cartridge there as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So a couple different ways to do that. So how do you prefer? Do you prefer the pure Tecmo Bowl as it was originally released, or do you like the Japan updates, or do you like the Tecmo Bowl 2016? If you could only play one of them from now until the end of time, which one would you pick?
We would stick with the USA and Japan version mixed together is what we would play with. And then the thing our programmer buddies did was Minnesota and Washington had the faulty playbook with the wide receiver run play. They took that play out and just put a regular run play. So those teams used to be 2 of the worst, and now they're kind of middle of the pack now. So it's really enhanced our enjoyment of even using those teams.
All right, so I guess that kind of gets into the one final question that I personally had, which was if you could communicate with the makers of Tecmo Bowl and thank them for one thing, what would it be? And if you could, ream them out for one thing, what would it be?
I have no complaints. Actually, one of the guys that was original programmer from Tecmo Bowl, believe it or not, I found him on Facebook and we're friends. So,
that does not surprise me.
The thing that really blows my mind is there are so many different things defensively that happen, reactions when the defense calls this play and the offense calls this play. There's things that short circuit the run blocking schemes. There's ways to invoke pass coverage help. I don't know if those things were accident or if they were designed into the game that way, but just those nuances that 95% of the people that play the game don't understand or realize are happening. I'm just blown away. It's like they totally knocked it out of the park with that stuff.
So attention to detail is what you'd thank them for.
Yes, definitely. Just how deep the game is. And that's the other thing too, is like Tecmo Super Bowl players see all the other features that their game has, but they didn't realize how deep the original game also is. So that's kind of why we also stick with that game.
Awesome. Jeremy, any remaining questions on your side? We're coming up close to time.
Well, we got a comment from Troy again. He says we can discuss it offline, but he would be interested in doing the NHL '94 tourney with you on September 24th. So yes.
That's we have a podcast for Tecmo versus RBI, and so we had Troy on just to talk about his tournament. So hopefully I can make it up there for that. I'm going to try to get to Green Bay that weekend, so I'll see if it works out. But
drop by Lambeau Field, give me something nice.
Yes, no doubt. So, and I try to help people that are also doing retro tournaments, just to kind of spread the word. So hopefully I can hit that tournament with Troy.
Awesome. Turf, any final questions?
I do have one Tecmo Bowl / Tecmo Super Bowl question. Is it true that Dan Marino could not be injured?
I've never even heard about that, so I'm sure there's a story behind it or something, but I guess I'll get on the forums and look into it, but I've never heard of that.
Well, now this was from 5th or 6th grade turf, back in the day. And me and my buddies, we played Tecmo Super Bowl quite a bit, and he never got hurt because, and we came up with a reason that he'd never been injured in his career up to that point, before he blew his knee out. So Dan Marino never got hurt in any of our games. So that'd be something to look into.
I wonder if there's a chance of probability for injury in Tecmo Super Bowl. So I mean, they did a lot of wacky things based on their own personal biases. So I could see it in play.
Dan Marino fan on the team.
Yeah.
All right, Lizzie. Any final questions?
Oh no, I'm good. I think it's kind of funny to hear how the Houston Astros kind of sucked back in the day and still kind of suck now. So.
Some things don't need to be immortalized in a ROM file, right?
Yeah, but it's kind of refreshing to hear about the Houston Oilers again. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So the wacky thing with the Oilers, or the Astros being so bad on RBI baseball, is they had to be one of the best teams in the league in '86 just to get on the game, and then they were made into one of the worst. So it's kind of weird how they did that.
Yeah, well, like I remember being told here in Houston, it's some player they dismissed. Since then, the Houston Astros have been cursed, so I think that's why. So it must have been that. There must have been a really good player back in the day, and then they said, "Oh, we don't need you anymore," and then, poof, Astros suck forever.
Which helps the Angels.
Well, I know that you don't consider yourself a retro gamer, but I would say just based on Tecmo Bowl and RBI baseball, we're going to count it.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you.
It's been fun. Thank you so much for being on the show and for entertaining our questions and telling us a little bit about the game.
Before you go, you want to give your website real quick and maybe a shout out to your friends?
Yeah, website Tecmo Bowl versus RBI baseball. It's indexed well, so if you just type in Tecmo and RBI into Google, it'll pop up. as for my friends, the reason I've won 3 tournaments at Tecmo Bowl this year is because of Nathan Mers in Perry, Iowa, Cam Allen, and Derek Brown up in Hamilton, Ontario, in Canada. Those guys are just as good as me, if not better in certain aspects. So when you play the best guys on the planet as your primary opponents, when you play everybody else, it's pretty much a walk in the park.
Nice. All right, so you heard it here. If you used to play against Jeremy, it'd be like 70-something to 0.
Yes,
you said
father.
you wouldn't. He'd totally skunk you. Like, you wouldn't even score a single point. He's saying.
I'm tempted to go play now just to see how bad he can really do it.
Does that include if he runs backwards and gets a touchback?
Safety. Just get safety the whole time.
Yeah.
Have you ever had anybody try to do that to you in a game? Just like run the opposite way?
No, I guess I can't. With the guys I play, like, we're always so competitive that nobody really jacks around. Like, Tecmo Bowl is pretty sacred when we play each other, so nobody's playing around.
Nobody's gotten totally desperate.
No.
Alrighty. Well, thanks again for being on the show, folks. We're gonna have a lot of those links for you down in the doodly-doo. For those of you watching the show after the recording, you can still tweet us on Twitter with hashtag RRPFTW. What'd you like about the show? What would you like to see in future shows? Go ahead and hit us up on Twitter. Also, we love your comments on YouTube and Facebook. So they keep us primed and pumped and give us plenty of ideas for what to bring you guys next. So thanks again for being on the show. And Turf,
Thank you.
it was a pleasure.
Appreciate y'all having me.
Absolutely. So take care, everybody. Good night.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Bye.
How do I stop the broadcast? I have to find the mouse. I can't find the mouse. Oh, there we go. All right, touchdown.